What's going on, everybody, and welcome back to another video. Today, I'm bringing you my top 36 wide receivers for fantasy in 2022. Now, when I talk about my receivers, I'm talking about half PPR leagues, and if you want to see any of my other rankings, I did quarterbacks and running backs. They'll be in the description below, or they'll be somewhere on the screen. But alright, let's dive right into it. So number one on the list for me, not a shocker to most, or really anybody, it's Cooper Kupp. And this one, look, it's simple. The guy was awesome last year. But the one thing that you have to keep in mind is Cooper Kupp was awesome, but he's not going to repeat what he did. He's not going to put up 900 yards again. It's nearly impossible. You look back at some of the other guys who had really monster seasons. Calvin Johnson had 1900 yards in 2012. The next year, down to 1400. Julio Jones had 1800 yards. Next year, 1400. Antonio Brown, 1800 yards. Next year, 1200. So don't expect Cooper Kupp to completely blow up like he did this year. So just take a step back and realize, and let's be realistic here, Cooper Kupp's great, probably not 1900 yards again. And number two, I have Justin Jefferson. And this one was tough for me. I couldn't not put Cooper Kupp one, but Justin Jefferson was awesome last year, and he's going to be awesome again. He could be the most skilled wide receiver in the NFL. Him, Jamar Chase, Cooper Kupp, there's so many. But Justin Jefferson really does it all. He can win over the middle, sideline, down the field, everywhere. He constantly does it. He's always open. He's awesome. And really, the only thing I have to say is last year, the targets went his way. They went up from 130 to 160 targets. I mean, that's awesome. I can see that swinging even harder in his direction this year, and he can take an even bigger leap in year three. Justin Jefferson's pretty awesome. Number three for me is Jamar Chase. Jamar Chase, once again, I feel like I'm repeating myself, but the dude's super talented, right? The only problem I had with him last year was he had some games where he dropped some pretty easy passes, but, whatever. I don't care. He's awesome, and he was one of the steals last year in the draft. I think this year he's going really early, but I think he's going to be well worth it. You think about it. He had 1,400 yards and was amazing for fantasy last year. And he only finished with 128 targets, which was 19th in the NFL. 19th. That's it. And he finished as a top 5 wide receiver. He had, some bad games last year is the only downfall I would say was he was a little inconsistent. He had 8 games under 12 fantasy points, half PPR points. 8 games, so that's nearly half your season. But listen, when he was on though, he won you those weeks. He has Joe Burrow and he's in a great offense. So I'm going back to Jamar Chase to improve as just a sophomore in the league. Number 4 for me, Stefon Diggs. Diggs, he really seems to be one of the surest bets to be a top 10 wide receiver in all of fantasy football. He has Josh Allen, he gets the targets, and he has no competing targets really. It's Gabe Davis, Isaiah McKenzie. That's kind of it. I mean, I can't really think of anyone else. Jamison Crowder, Dawson Knox, I guess, but I don't really trust any of those guys. So when you look at the guys above him, though, Jamar Chase has T. Higgins. Justin Jefferson has Adam Thielen. Cooper Kupp now has Allen Robinson. The whole show seems to be Stefon Diggs. So that's awesome. And listen, Diggs to me, he reminds me, this is real basic, scenario or real basic, comparison here, but Diggs is kind of like the Zeke Elliott of a wide receiver, right? He doesn't have a ton of blow-up games. He only had 3 games over 25 points in the past two seasons. That's it. 3 games over 25 points. Not great, but he's super consistent, and at the end of the year, he's going to be near the top 5 total in points. He's never going to disappoint you. And moving on to number 5, this is the first wide receiver that really scares me. The one that really puts me on the edge of my seat and makes me nervous. It's Davante Adams. I mean, look, when you leave the back-to-back MVP and Aaron Rodgers for Derek Carr, I mean, that's a downgrade. I mean, Carr hasn't thrown 30 touchdowns since 2015 rather. Still, I mean, it's not great. It's been a long time. And look, Derek Carr, is he a solid quarterback? Absolutely. He's good. He's not great. He's good. My fear is that there's going to be a lot of passes to go around. I think Hunter Renfrow is a legitimate target. I think he's a legit player and deserves to get targets. Darren Waller, I mean, he's a top 5 talented tight end in the league. He's awesome. That's a lot of people you have to feed. And sure, Davante Adams could be the 1A of that offense, or the 1, if you want to give him that title. That's fair. The dude's proven it. He's awesome. but I worry Derek Carr isn't going to be good enough to consistently feed him what he needs to get fed, especially in the red zone, because that's where Devontae Adams really flourishes, is he gets a ton of touchdowns. But listen, Devontae Adams could just break the mold and be awesome no matter what. He'd be quarterback proof. You know who else has a pretty good, solid quarterback? Justin Jefferson. And he does great every year with Kirk Cousins. So maybe I'm over worrying about Devontae Adams. I think he's a riskier pick, but he could be well worth it in your first round, fringe second round. Next on my list, number 6, another guy that worries me, Tyreek Hill. Look, Tyreek Hill's awesome. He has been forever, but he's not with Patrick Mahomes anymore. Tyreek Hill's a 101, but if there's a player you got to compare him to, it's probably Deebo Samuel. And lucky enough for him, he goes to an offense with Mike McDaniel, who was the former, or now head coach, but former OC of Deebo Samuel in the 49ers, San Francisco. And look, if he gets that Deebo rule, maybe not so much because I worry he can't hold up as a running back, but if he plays receiver and gets some touches here and there in the backfield, I think Tyreek Hill will flourish next year. The only downfall I have is I've never been a big Tua fan. You can go back on my channel, you can look all the way back to when I did a scouting report on him. I wasn't a fan. I was not a fan of Tua. So at the end of the day, I think he's going to be just fine because a playmaker like him that's so electric, I think he's just going to be great no matter what. Coming in at number 7, talking about Deebo Samuel, is Deebo Samuel. Now, he's one of the hardest players to rank because last year was such a, I don't want to say fluky year, but it was such a anomaly. He had more he had more touchdowns running than he did receiving, and that's so uncommon for a receiver, right? He had 8 touchdowns on the ground last year. Miles Sanders had 157 carries last year. Deebo only had 59, I believe, 59 carries, and he had 8 touchdowns. Miles Sanders had 0. Miles Sanders is a running back. The big concern I have is I just don't think he's going to be able to repeat all those touchdown numbers he had. He only had 6 receiving touchdowns. What if they don't want to use him as a running back anymore because he gets beat up? He hasn't been healthy in his career. But look, Deebo Samuel is such a great playmaker. I think, kind of like Tyreek Hill, no matter where you give him the ball, if you get it in his hands, he's going to break big plays. He's just that type of player, and he's special. And now we're moving on to where we're out of my wide receiver ones, where I go, none of these guys can finish as the wide receiver 1, in my opinion. I think you can, sure, maybe top 5, but you have no wide receiver 1 potential anymore. It's out the window. And that's Keenan Allen. I'm in on Keenan Allen this year, and 8 might be high, right? Because we kind of know what he is. He gets you 1,000 to 1,200 yards. He gets you 6 touchdowns, and he's going to catch you over 100 passes. But I just believe so much in Justin Herbert this year. I think Herbert's going to blow up. I think he's going to go from up-and-coming player, up-and-coming youngster to superstar quarterback, elite player. I mean, the dude had over 40 touchdowns last year. I just think no matter what happens, Keenan Allen's going to be safe, and he has nothing. He has the safest floor in all fantasy football, but he has nowhere to go but up. If Herbert really takes the next step, I just don't see why Keenan Allen, as long as he stays healthy, can't go for 110 catches, somewhere 1,300 yards, and maybe not a huge touchdown maker, but he can always fluke into that because he's a great player, and so is Justin Herbert. Number 9 for me is, this one is a big question mark because it's Chris Godwin. It's, he has to be healthy week 1, or at least close to week 1 estimate, but I mean, really week 1. Last season, Godwin was on pace for 120 catches, 1,300 yards, and 6 TDs. I think he's the more stable wide receiver in Tampa. We'll talk about Mike Evans in a few picks, but, while you get the big games from Mike Evans, you get the stable games, you get the consistency from Chris Godwin. I still think Brady will be great this year. I can't bet against the GOAT. I can't. So if Godwin's healthy week 1, why can't he repeat his recent success? And like I said, my only question or my only concern is he going to be ready for week 1? Because if he's not ready for week 1, when will he be ready? Number 10, moving on to CeeDee Lamb of the Cowboys. Look, Lamb seems to be everyone's my guy this year. Everyone believes in him. And I would say I do, but I'm not as confident as everyone else because I haven't seen him do it before. He's a slot receiver. Slot receivers usually have a tougher time doing it. He didn't have a crazy year last year. It was good. Don't get me wrong. I guess everyone's freaking out because he jumps into the wide receiver one spot. He's the main guy for Dallas. There's no Amari Cooper. A lot of the other guys are banged out. I know Michael Gallup might not even play week one. So it's him and it's Dalton Schultz and the running backs out of the backfield and maybe some rookies. But just because he's the number one wide receiver doesn't mean he's going to be completely awesome guaranteed. So don't get fooled into saying, oh my, well, Amari Cooper's gone. That's 100. It was 103 targets last year. Those are all going to go to Lamb, because that's not the case. They're going to have to get a wide receiver 2 in there somewhere. Maybe Lamb. Maybe it is him. That's the case. That's 10, because it's a maybe. If I knew he was going to get 103 more targets, or, the majority where he's going to get another 70, yeah, I would make him a top 5 receiver, but I don't know. And is Dak Prescott a good quarterback? Yeah. Is he great? I don't think so. I think he's pretty good. But like I said earlier, it worked with Justin Jefferson. It's going to probably work with Devontae Adams. So maybe it works with CeeDee Lamb. Number 11 for me, Mike Evans. Here he is. I mean, you know what he gets. He's actually the definition of Zeke Elliott. You're getting 1,000+ yards, probably somewhere between 1,100 and 1,200. You're getting double-digit TDs. You're going to push for it every year, and you're probably going to finish with 80 catches. If you want a receiver that is going to be locked into wide receiver 12 and better, Mike Evans is your guy. You're going to get some disappointing weeks where he gets, 5 targets and catches 2 passes for 30 yards, and you go, that sucked. But then he's going to bounce back the next week, and he's going to catch 8 passes for 150 and 2 touchdowns. He's going to go off. It's the name of his game. He's never been consistent, but he's always blown up. And these are his finishes since 2018. So wide receiver 9, 10, 12, and 8. I mean, you can't beat that. Number 12 for me, this one makes me sick, man. It's Mike Thomas. It's Michael Thomas, and the upside is just so real because he's so good. I know he's good. We all know he's good, but he hasn't played in many games. He didn't play last year. We're hoping he's healthy this year. We don't even know for sure yet. And it's Jameis Winston and Andy Dalton at quarterback, and that's sketchy. It's a sketchy situation, but Michael Thomas is just so good. The last time we saw him play, he was on pace for 97 catches, 1,000 yards, but 0 touchdowns. He didn't score a single touchdown, and the only one he did was in the playoff game against the Bears. Like that, he scored a playoff game against the Bears. That was the only touchdown he had in 2019. Didn't play in 2020. Didn't play in 2021. But look, number 12, we know how great he is, and this could be a steal. This could be a huge steal here because he's going as ADP wide receiver 22, pick 61 overall. So if he's going to play right away, he could be a steal for you in the draft. Moving on to number 13, it's Deontay Johnson. And look, Deontay Johnson is really fun. I mean, he's a great player. He's super, like I said, he's super fun. He's shifty. He's fun with the ball in his hands. He put up over 100 receptions and 1,100 yards last year with Big Ben as his quarterback. And Big Ben was horrible. And I actually do believe Mitch Trubisky and maybe Kenny Pickett, if he gets some playing time, will be a bit of an upgrade over Big Ben. Simply for the fact of Ben couldn't throw downfield. And it wasn't a secret. So teams, they let you throw everything underneath. And there was no downfield element in their offense at all. I think with Mitch Trubisky, although he isn't great, you have to worry about the downfield accuracy or the downfield, throwing ability, really just being able to uncork it. And you have to worry about his athletic ability, something Ben hasn't possessed really ever, but in a long, long time. So they bring 2 new elements into Pittsburgh. I think that only does nothing but open up the offense for the Pittsburgh Steelers. And at the end of the day, like I said, I think Johnson will just be a lock to be the main wide receiver there. I don't worry about Claypool. I don't worry about George Pickens. I don't worry about these guys. I just think Deontay Johnson is the underneath, safe target, dump down guy that's just going to catch a million passes. Maybe not for a ton of yards every game, but it's going to stack up, and he's going to be a safe, top 10-ish wide receiver for you. Number 14 is another guy that I think people are really going to be in on this year, and it's Michael Pittman. People, like I said, in the fantasy community are excited about Pittman, and I understand why. I watched his tape, and I loved it. He reminded me he's a clone of Allen Robinson, right? He doesn't do a lot with the ball in his hands after the catch, but man, when he gets the catch, when he goes up for that one-on-one 50-50 ball, it's not a 50-50 ball. It's like a 70-30 in his favor. He's great. He lives on the sideline, and he lives over the middle. He's a chunk gainer. Carson Wentz is gone, and although Carson Wentz had a decent statistical year, we know Carson Wentz's story. He's very inconsistent. He's up and down. He's not the most accurate. Matt Ryan, on the other hand, the opposite. Had a bad year last year, but I'm going to assume that's because he had Russell Gage and, Kyle Pitts as his main, receivers. I think Matt Ryan could be way better for this offense simply for the fact that I think he has a better understanding. He's more seasoned. He's proven. And he's really accurate. He doesn't have the best arm anymore, but he's still really accurate. The type of player Pittman looks to be, like I said, may never be the 100 plus receptions, 1,500 yard guy, because usually the Allen Robinson type doesn't turn into that. But I believe 1,200 yards and double digit TDs are easily a possibility for Michael Pittman next year. Easily. Number 15 for me is DJ Moore. And like this one, we know the story too. Year after year after year, and it's literally been 3 years in a row. He puts up 80 to 90 receptions, 1,100 yards, and 4 touchdowns. That's it. And you might say, so why do you have him at 15? Doesn't that guy seem like he should be way lower? But I think he's destined for so much more. He's destined for greater things. He's so talented. This guy's a freak on film. He signed a big deal to stay with Carolina. The downfall is it's Sam Darnold, man. It is what it is. He had a hot start when Christian McCaffrey was there, but once McCaffrey went out, the whole offense fell apart. So maybe McCaffrey's the key to this offense if he stays healthy, but having him at 15, I want to have him higher, but I can't. I just don't trust Sam Darnold. So I feel like the floor's safe. You know what you're going to get with DJ Moore, but when it comes down to it, at the end of the day, it's Sam Darnold, so don't get your expectations too high. But I just think a player of his talent and his caliber, really, 4 touchdowns, I just think he's going to crush that one day and surprise us all for fantasy football. Maybe it's this year, maybe it's not, but I believe so much in the talent that's why I have him at number 15. Number 16. This is where I'm kind of now into the next group of guys where I go, ugh, I don't know, man. And it's probably not fair to put AJ Brown on this list. He might have been, should have been the last tier, but man, Brown scares me. I think he's another awesome player. He's just this vertical threat that he's so big, he's so fast, and with the ball in his hand, he's actually great after the catch, unlike Pittman, where he makes guys miss, he extends plays and does all these great things. I hate Jalen Hurts as a passer, man. I hate him. I just don't think he's good. He didn't impress me at all really last year. The hope is he has to get better, Jalen Hurts. He has to get more consistent and be able to throw, more passes, because he only threw 3,000 yards last year. That's never going to sustain a wide receiver 1 fringe 2 guy. It's not going to happen. And last year, Devonta Smith was the wide receiver 1. He finished with 916 yards. That's not going to cut it for a wide receiver 1 fringe 2. That's not even a wide receiver 3 in today's NFL. So for AJ Brown to succeed, he's going to have to catch a lot of deep passes. I see a lot of inconsistency in his game, but we're at wide receiver 16. So now you're shooting for upside, and you're shooting for those big weeks, but heavy down weeks. And I think that's what AJ Brown's going to be this year. But still, a really talented player who could break the mold if Jalen Hurts improves. Number 17 for me is DK Metcalf. And look, this is kind of what I've been saying, and we're in this really tough area of wide receiver where, I don't know, man, are they good? Like, the receivers are good, but are the quarterbacks good? No, not really. And I don't know how to rank them, right? So DK Metcalf is a freak. I mean, this dude is super talented, but I just don't love the combo of Drew Lock and Geno Smith. But his saving grace might be Baker Mayfield or Jimmy Garoppolo getting traded there. I don't love either of those guys, but they're way better than Drew Lock, Geno Smith. But I will say, if it is Drew Lock / Geno Smith, last year with Geno Smith as a starter, Russell Wilson missed 3 games. Geno Smith, I can't believe I'm saying this, but actually had some productive games with DK Metcalf. Metcalf averaged 4.5 receptions for 65 yards and a touchdown per game. So those aren't crazy numbers, but at wide receiver 17, if he could do that with Geno Smith, I think he could do it with Drew Lock, who I think will be the starter. Metcalf is just a special player. He's a home run waiting to happen. You get the ball in his hands, he makes plays. Like I said, the only hope I really have is that they get a better quarterback in the quarterback room under center. And I actually do think it's a possibility, and I think it's something that will happen. Number 18 for me is T. Higgins, and I'm a lot lower than consensus on Higgins. And, this is the guy that I just don't think has upside. I'm gonna go out and say it. I think he's pretty safe at being a 900 to 1100 yard receiver, which is great. Maybe push for high single digit touchdowns, but we have to realize he has like one of the best receivers in front of him in the entire NFL, who only had 129 targets last year. Do we not think this offseason Zach Taylor is going to go, maybe we should give T. Higgins the ball more instead of Jamar Chase? To me, that just makes no sense. It doesn't. So, not that I think T. Higgins is going to, decline. I just think he's going to stay where he was at. And that's near 1,100 yards or 1,000 yards and 6 to 8 touchdowns. And that's kind of tight end or wide receiver 18. And the hard thing with Higgins is last year, 6 of his 14 games, he finished with less than 7 targets. But in the games where he was targeted 10 times, he scored 13, 9.7, not great, but 24 and 37 points. So when he gets the targets, he blows up and he's a good receiver. But when he doesn't, he has some really bad low weeks. And that's just going to happen when you're behind Jamar Chase. So be prepared when you draft him. You're going to have highs and lows. Some weeks is his week, some weeks it's Chase's. Moving on to wide receiver 19, Allen Robinson. And Robinson's 2021 season raised some major concerns, some red flags, because he wasn't healthy. Or was it that? Was he not healthy? Was he washed? Was it the quarterback situation with Justin Fields and Andy Dalton, and I think Nick Foles even played? Like, it just wasn't a good situation. But he's only 29, so I can't imagine that after having a good 1,200 yard season the year prior, he just fell off a cliff that hard. The Rams were desperately looking for a wide receiver too, and I think they found their guy in Allen Robinson. And last year, Robert Woods was on pace for 85 receptions, 1,000 yards, and 8 touchdowns. If Allen Robinson does that this year, he's going to be well worth wide receiver 19. I think that's great. And I think Allen Robinson's a little bit better than Robert Woods. Robinson can be a great red zone weapon, and if he's his old self, I see 1,200 yards and 8 touchdowns coming his way. Like clockwork. I think Robinson can do it. Number 20, I'm going to go through these last guys a little bit quicker. Terry McLaurin, I mean, the skills are there, but Carson Wentz is just super rocky. I mean, we know. We saw Michael Pittman last year. Michael Pittman had great weeks and bad weeks. And Terry McLaurin's super awesome. He signed that fat contract. I believe it was 3 for $70. That's awesome, but I think his upside's capped. He's not a big receiver, so I don't think the touchdown upside's there. So that's a big issue to finish as like a top 10 wide receiver for fantasy. And like I said, he hasn't proven it quite yet. He's shown flashes, but he hasn't put it all together. And I don't know if Carson Wentz is the guy that gets him, that makes him consistently or put it all together. Number 21, Amari Cooper. And this rank is me assuming Deshaun Watson misses 0 to 4 games, which is like a bold claim. I'm not saying he should or shouldn't, whatever, but right now we don't know. Cooper is another player. You kind of just know what you're getting. You're getting 1,000 yards, 8 touchdowns. It's what he's been his whole career. Literally, he's been 1,100 yard range. And at this point, I can't expect him to do much better. So that's just what I'm expecting from him in Cleveland. Whether it's Jacoby Brissett, whether it's Baker Mayfield, whether it's Deshaun Watson, I'm expecting about 1,008. That's what I'm going for. Number 22 is Mike Williams. And the only reason I have someone like Amari Cooper over Mike Williams, which might be kind of stupid, is if Deshaun Watson does play, Amari Cooper, is going to be pretty good. I believe that. Mike Williams, I love Justin Herbert, but Mike Williams is such an up and down player. I mean, it's just it's in his DNA too. It's just one of those things where you have Keenan Allen, who's just going to be consistent every week, maybe not have major blowups, but you have Mike Williams on the other hand, who's just the opposite. It's like Chris Godwin and Mike Evans. It's one player super consistent, Keenan Allen, and Mike Williams will be up and down, have huge games, but then complete duds. So that's just kind of the thing you're getting in Mike Williams. But I was surprised last year because he had 1,100 yards and 9 touchdowns. But like I said, that comes with the territory up and down. Number 23 is Brandon Cooks, and he's widely regarded as the most underrated player in fantasy football history, right? This guy does nothing but finish as a top 10 to 15 receiver, and yet I have him at 23. And the biggest reason I have him at wide receiver 23 is I know he's going to finish higher than that, but I know his upside's capped. I know it is. While I think 1,100 yards and probably 6 touchdowns are in play, Cooks has never had double-digit TDs, so I believe his upside's kind of capped. And I don't trust Davis Mills. I think he's going to prove to us this year that he's an okay quarterback. He's maybe Taylor Heineke-ish, where he should be a backup, a fringe starter, or maybe not a starter at all. So I just think that's why I had Brandon Cooks a little bit lower, is just his upside's so capped, and he's going to be hit or miss too. It's just how he rules. And number 24 is Courtland Sutton. And this guy is near and dear to my heart. I made a video 2 years ago, the season before he tore his ACL, about how I thought he was going to break out and have a crazy great year. Unfortunately, he tore his ACL. And then came back this year as the wide receiver one for the Broncos, and it just wasn't great. And that is a little combination of Drew Lock and Teddy Bridgewater. They just weren't very good. None of the receivers were good for the Broncos. But I believe in Courtland Sutton's talent, and I know they got Russell Wilson this year, and I just think Russell Wilson's awesome. I don't think he's washed at all. I think he's still an elite quarterback. So, if Courtland Sutton's completely healthy off the ACL and is, himself again like he was in that, 2019 season would be before he tore his ACL, I think he's going to be the wide receiver one. I don't care about Jerry Jeudy. That guy hasn't proven me anything. Tim Patrick's been solid. I'm in on Courtland Sutton. Maybe 24 is low for him. Maybe it's high. But I'm in. I think him and Russell Wilson can make a great connection. And I see 1,100, 1,200 yards and double-digit TDs coming his way. This is one of the guys ranked lower that I think does have some legitimate upside, that has the shot to be great. And now I'm just going to run through these guys. I have really no notes, so these are all coming off the top. 25, I have Jalen Waddle. I don't hate Jalen Waddle, but I know he's going to go a lot higher, and I'm not going to get him. My concern is I think him and Tyreek Hill are kind of the same player, and I think Tyreek Hill's better. So if you're going to do the Debo stuff or whatever Jalen Waddle did last year where he caught 1 million underneath passes, why do it to him when you can do it to Tyreek Hill, who's, I think, faster, shiftier, quicker, all those things. I'm not saying Jalen Waddle has no upside, because what if he has the same role as he did last year where he just catches 1 million dump-offs? They could use him in that role again. But it worries me that maybe he takes a backseat to Tyreek Hill. Number 26 is Hunter Renfrow. And 26 Hunter Renfrow is, I wanted to make him higher, but I can't with Devontae Adams and Darren Waller, all in that, receiving core. And he's probably just going to be, honestly, pretty steady. He's probably going to be one of those guys to where he finishes the wide receiver 15, but he never really hurts you and he never really wins you any weeks. He's just consistently that 5, 6, 7 for 60 yards and maybe a touchdown every week. It's one of those guys. Number 27 is Marquise Brown. I wouldn't have him this high if DeAndre Hopkins wasn't suspended for 6 games, but he is. I think Marquise Brown's a good player. Kyler Murray usually starts off the season red hot and then declines on the back half. He's done it 2 years in a row. But, Marquise Brown, I think he's really fast. If he can improve his hands, that'd be great. But if he's going to step into the wide receiver spot, or wide receiver 1 spot for 6 weeks, I think that's worth drafting. And then coming back as a wide receiver 2 in the back half and a pass happy offense that they have in Arizona, I'd love to have Marquise Brown on my team. Number 28, Juju Smith-Schuster. Juju hasn't proven it. I mean, he's had some good years, but that's what Big Ben, and he hasn't been great since that big blow-up season with him and Antonio Brown. But if he's going to step in also as Patrick Mahomes wide receiver 1, where I think he will, because I don't trust really anyone else there, Juju might not, have the most upside in the world, but I think he's kind of like Hunter Renfrow, where he's just going to be super consistent. He's going to have his weeks and have his off weeks, but he's going to have some good games and some bad games. And I'm really just kind of repeating myself with a lot of these guys, but, if you're going to play with Patrick Mahomes, I think you have some upside in your game. 29 is Adam Thielen, and Thielen just hasn't been healthy, and the yardage hasn't really been there the last 2 years, but the touchdowns, I mean, he's been double digits each year. It's proven that he's great in the red zone. So if I can get this guy as my wide receiver 3, where some weeks I get the touchdown, the other weeks I don't, I think I live with that. It's a very, hit or miss game. It's a risky pick, but if he's still healthy and has, some juice left, as I believe he's 30 or 31, if he's going to go out and get me double digit touchdowns, maybe only 900 yards, I live with that, every other week. Number 30 is Rashad Bateman. Rashad Bateman, I mean, really it comes down to Marquise Brown's gone, and I thought, he looked pretty good last year, and he had some big games, with Marquise Brown there. Lamar Jackson, not the best passer in the world, but I think he has improved. But as the wide receiver 1 of any team, you have some upside, man. You do. So he could really finish anywhere. I mean, we saw Marquise Brown last year have, I believe, 6 touchdowns and over 1,000 yards. So if Rashad Bateman can do the same, he's going to be worth something for fantasy. Number 31 is Tyler Lockett. And this player, Lockett's great. I wish he would get traded from Seattle, honestly, and go to somewhere. What if he went to Green Bay? Wouldn't that be awesome? But he's in Seattle. I don't trust DK, and I just don't trust Geno Smith. So I have to knock him down a little bit. I think he's a great player who has, a lot of talent, but that's just going to be a rocky one for me. But I just believe in the talent, so that's why I have him at 31. 32, Robert Woods. Coming off the ACL, I'm assuming he's going to be healthy. He's going to be the wide receiver one, I think, in Tennessee. Treylon Burks hasn't even practiced yet. And Woods is going at like wide receiver 41 last I checked, and that's just way too low. He was the wide receiver, 2 or 1-ish in that Rams offense, and it's a Rams offense. It's different from Tennessee, but coming off those play actions, being the kind of underneath receiver guy, Robert Woods could have a pretty decent year. 33 is Kenny Golladay. I just thought this guy was super talented when he went to the Giants. I was worried because Daniel Jones sucks. I hate Daniel Jones. He just couldn't stay healthy last year. There's always upside with him because I think he is a touchdown maker. He's a big play receiver. He's kind of like Allen Robinson. I still think the talent's there, but Daniel Jones kind of kills me. So that's why I'm a little lower. But I think he has a lot of upside to prove why he was worth all that money for the Giants. Number 34 is Darnell Mooney. I don't know. I mean, he had 1,000 yards last year. Showed flashes, but I wouldn't say anything really consistent or concrete. It comes down to, is Justin Fields going to take a step forward? He has to throw 20 to 30 touchdowns next year, and I don't know if that's in Justin Fields' game. He looked really rusty last year, had good moments but bad moments as well. All rookies really did. And I don't know. I guess he's the wide receiver one, so there's upside there, like I've been saying for really all these guys. He's the wide receiver one for that team, and that's why I have him at 34. 35 is Christian Kirk, and once again, rookie quarterback, or I guess sophomore quarterback, and Trevor Lawrence. I'm just gonna bet on the prospect of Trevor Lawrence, maybe taking the next step. I did a video if you want to check it out on Trevor Lawrence. I think he looked good last year at times. Of course, he had some rough patches. They all did, but if Trevor Lawrence can get it all together, maybe Christian Kirk can be that wide receiver one they've been desperately needing. I don't think the type of player that Christian Kirk is, he's not really a prototypical wide receiver one, so I don't think he would, blow up to be a 1,500-yard receiver, but, I think 1,000 and 5-6 touchdowns is in the cards. I really do. So if Trevor Lawrence could do it, can really improve on his game from last year and throw for 25, 30 touchdowns, I think I'm in on Christian Kirk. And 36, I'm just going to say DeAndre Hopkins. The dude's elite. He's awesome. When he plays, last year he caught 1 million touchdowns and, in his half season that he played, but he's missing 6 games because of PEDs. I hope this isn't the beginning of the end for him, but, if he's going to step in and be the wide receiver one and he's still great, and I thought on film he was good last year, I just thought the yardage was low for some random reason, but he still caught a ton of touchdowns. I'm in on Hopkins. The 6-game suspension is hard to swallow, but I like him over a lot of guys below him. I just think everyone below that I have ranked, I just don't think really has any safety or upside. And I think I'm just willing to take the shot on Hopkins and wait it out for the 6 weeks that he'll have to sit on my bench. And all right, I went through all 36 of my wide receivers. So let me know down below who you disagree with, who you agree with. Follow me on Twitter at EvankTheTankFF. And listen, subscribe to the channel, like the video. I'll have my tight ends rankings coming out soon. And I'm actually going to probably do a defense and kicker one, make it really short and quick. I figure you don't see those too often. So, but all right, that's the video. So thanks for watching. Like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time.